By 2-1. Take a look at that from City, just a one shot on target. Taking a look at what that means then in the Premier League. United now just 1 point off City. Arsenal with a chance to extend that lead to 7 points tomorrow as they take on Spurs. Here at the back pages then some of the newspapers. City stars in tunnel rage, not happy about the goal that was given. Varsity Blues, Pep stars tunnel rage. Ref after Fernandes and Rashford snatch win. For more on this, let's welcome in Moreno and Nedum Onuoha and Craig Burley. Craig, let's get straight to it. Your reaction to the Bruno goal being given?
Well, I believe it's correct by the letter of the law. He doesn't impact Akanji or Walker's ability to play the ball, and therefore you blame the lawmakers. Blame the lawmakers, but yeah, I mean, I was 50-50 on it, but I mean, I think it's good.
The referees that we've spoken to have agreed that by the letter of the law, this is a goal, Stevie.
By the letter of the law. I mean, I heard the actual laws that were read out earlier.
Yep.
And they're not that clear. They're not black and white. It's not yes and no. And every single professional footballer will understand that there is absolutely no way you can turn around and say that Rashford was not interfering with play. The biggest reason they brought this new rule in some time ago was so that some guy standing 20 yards wide in an offside position, it meant that the goal wasn't disallowed. Now, they've tweaked around with the explanation of the rule. But the truth is, anybody who's involved in football understands that if you're not interfering with play, then you're not involved. You can't say he's not interfering with play. Not only is he interfering with the goalkeeper, he actually interferes with Bruno Fernandes as well. Because Bruno Fernandes hangs back because he thinks that he's going to shoot. And then whether there's some communication or whether they understand that Rashford's offside, Bruno Fernandes then steps to the side and takes the shot. So he's interfering with play. Surely that is the letter or the interpretation of the law. Is he interfering with play, yes or no? The fact is, and you cannot tell me he's not. So it shouldn't have been allowed.
Nedum?
It's not even difficult.
Yeah, I understand the letter of the law and stuff, but I think it's misguided because it's clearly been created by people who haven't been involved in situations like that. I think as you look back at the clip, you can see Akanji he's defending that according to Marcus Rashford having the ball close to his feet, not to the fact that Fernandes is coming from behind. Because from Akanji's view, he was the only person he was looking at. And I think if Rashford would have stopped and then he saw Fernandes, maybe he would have run full speed to try and get it. But instead, he's like curtailing his run, like he's slowed down there at that point. Because he's thinking, well, Rashford's going to get it, so surely that's interfering with play. But unfortunately, the way the law is written and by the people who interpret it, they say because he's not touched it, he's not interfering. But again, like every referee is saying the same thing. But again, it's just missing that point. And I think this is the sort of division that sometimes we have within football, whereby there are those who play it and those who sort of referee it and see the rules from that standpoint. Somebody on the field is always affecting it, especially when the ball is a foot away from them for the 2 seconds that it's happening and it's developing. So it's a shame that it ended up being that and being, such a not necessarily contentious decision. Because as Craig said, according to the letter of the law, he didn't touch it, so they deem him to not be interfering. But I think anybody on this panel who's played football will know, seeing somebody running forward with the ball at their feet is interfering with play, whether we like it or not.
Craig, let's talk about the game overall. Too unfair?
Well, they scored 2 goals, didn't they?
They did score 2 goals, that's true, but we've seen occasions where maybe City have dominated, lots of chances, David De Gea standing on his head. We didn't see it in this situation, did we?
Well, we saw City dominate in the second half. They just didn't create many chances. I mean, they're just not at their best. I mean, I'm surprised Phil Foden even managed out for the second half. Didn't last much longer. Haaland was quiet. De Bruyne created the goal, but he's off his game. There's so many things that are confusing at the moment for Manchester City and their manager. And one of the things is his constant tinkering as well. Now, it was more simplistic today, than it was at Chelsea a week or so ago. But there's lots of their key players are not quite hitting the heights. I mean, they were better in the second half, but as you said, I think they had one shot on target, and that was the goal. So he's talked about body language in the last couple of weeks. I think he can sense a little bit of switching off, maybe not switching off is the right terminology, but a little bit of standards dropping a little bit of one or two players, and he's going to have to sort that out. But yeah, look, United didn't dominate the game, obviously, but they created more chances, particularly with the balls over the top. So, yeah, and by the way, they're in the title race. They're bang in it now, and the form they're in.
And we'll talk about more United in a moment. Nedum, what's up with City?
I don't know. I think maybe some of the stuff that Craig said is true there, because some of the players aren't really at the best of form. I think De Bruyne, since he's come back from the World Cup, has been good for a couple of games, but quite a few others he hasn't. I think Phil Foden looks a shadow of himself at this moment in time. And say Haaland isn't necessarily, in the last couple of games that he's played, been that good either. But I think as well, Cancelo midweek in the Carabao Cup was particularly poor. But I think for City, it's so interesting because they're having what feels like a bad season, yet still they're in second place and they're still a point ahead of a team, which is the form team in the Premier League right now, in Manchester United. And it's tough for them to lose a derby game, for them to feel like they're lacking creativity. But then for the way that they play and the way that they are, when some of those players do come into form, no one would be surprised if they went on a long run. Before you know it, they're back in with a chance of, being back at the top of the Premier League. But something's just missing at this moment in time. I thought the game in midweek in the Carabao Cup was particularly alarming. Today I wasn't as alarmed because they were playing against a good side who had a lot of confidence. And, it's probably, I can't remember the last time United probably were in such a spell where the players on the field fully believed in themselves and each other and probably felt they could get a result and they could control elements of the game with and without the ball. But I think for City, it's disappointing, but they're still right there. I think the game tomorrow between Arsenal and Spurs is a big game. But City, they're going to be approaching every game, trying to win it. And some of those players, maybe they're struggling since the World Cup ended, rather. But they'll find something because they tend to do that. And when they do, they're going to be a really tough side between now and the end of the season to play against.
We know Nedum in his City way is going to put a positive spin on it. But with all that attacking power that they have, and it's not just today, we've seen it over the last few matches, they're struggling to create anything.
Yeah, and the guys mentioned Haaland. So I'm going to address Haaland for a second. Why is Erling Haaland, and I don't know whether this by design or not, but why is Erling Haaland dropping 30 yards from his own goal, receiving the ball from center back? How does that help anything? How does that help him? How does that help the team? The only people that helps is the opposing center backs. If you're Rafael Varane and Luke Shaw and you see Erling Haaland 40 yards from you, you're like, go ahead, stay over there. You're not a threat over there. I don't think that this team really maximizes the skill set of Erling Haaland to the point to where he makes runs to get him behind, and they just don't play him the ball. Every once in a while, you have to go and play a ball in behind that he can go and get. In a physical matchup, if it is Erling Haaland against Luke Shaw, who's going to win that more times than not? It's going to be Haaland, and yet we never saw it. Manchester City will look at a ball to be played through, and they'll decide to go sideways, back, 5-yard passes here, 5-yard passes there. At some point, you have to threaten with Erling Haaland and take advantage of what you have in front of you. He was very, very quiet, but he was never involved. It's not like he was quiet and that he was participating. He wasn't even participating. The game was going around him, and Erling Haaland, one of the most dominant strikers in the world, was never involved.
You were critical of Pep for tinkering too much. Didn't tinker today.
No. Do you know, there's a couple of things. The whole thing with Haaland, sometimes playing balls in behind that Haaland or anybody else is not going to get on the end of, in the long run, helps you. Because as a centre-back, if balls are getting played in behind me, I start thinking it's coming all the time and I take a step back. Then the space opens up in the front. But they don't do that. So it makes it easier to defend against them. It's just unfortunate that they seem to have a loss of form all around the front players. Except Haaland, I would suggest, because he's not getting the chances. The edge is missing, and that's where Pep and his staff and all the other 400 staff that they've got, all these scientists, have to figure out, are they training too much? Are they not resting enough? You have to go right back to scratch and you figure out what we're doing, what can we curtail, how do we get the strength back in the legs? Because that's all that's missing. The way they're playing, there's nothing wrong with the way they're playing. 70% of the ball. Come on, you can't argue with that. But that final third, you have to help yourself. And because of form and because not using Haaland properly, it's hurting them.
Craig, do you see City getting this edge back quickly?
No, I don't. And it was last year or the year before they went on this crazy run of results. But I just don't see this City side at the moment doing that. They were sloppy at Chelsea a couple of weeks ago. They won the game, but the passing was sloppy. The passing was sloppy in the first half today in particular. Prior to the... sorry. Got a bad throat at the moment. Just back to you, boys.
All right. Wow, quiet Craig. Nedum, looking at it, though, from the red side of Manchester, obviously the argument is in the past when they went 1-0 down, their heads would drop, but things have changed this season. That Ten Hag has come in and galvanised the team, and they have a lot more belief now, which was shown in that final 15 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I think winning games will give you that level of belief, and they've been really, really good at home this season as well. You know, don't think they conceded since maybe September at home. So that would have been a shock, well, not a shock for them to concede, but, you know, the crowd going there on this occasion, they weren't going there expecting City to just turn them over. They knew that in this moment, they were the form side, and for City, they needed to find something to try and beat them. So they went a goal down, but they still knew that they had some of the better players on the field who could create chances for some players. And you had Marcus Rashford, who's arguably the form player in the whole league right now. So why would you lose that sense of belief? I think the manager on the sideline tried to remain positive. The fans in there were positive, because at times, you know, within football, when you're not getting results, it can get toxic from the outside. But you can see it's a positive environment. United fans, they're in a good spot. And as Craig was saying, like, it feels like they're part of this title chase now. Even though Arsenal can win tomorrow and still be 8 points clear or 9 points clear or whatever it's going to be, you know, they are beating anybody and everybody in front of them at this moment in time. So why would they not believe that they can do that going forward, especially knowing that they're playing Arsenal in a couple of games' time as well? So fair play to United. It feels like United are kind of back. And it's a big relief because, you know, at the start of the season, somehow I put them in the top 4. Now here we are, then a few months later.
That's where that was going. That was how it was going.
There we go.
Craig, can you talk now? I'm surprised you haven't just plugged it all on and gone home.
I was going to say before my coughing fit that what City were doing well before the World Cup was switching play, getting it wide, utilising their full-backs, getting De Bruyne wide and whipping balls in the box. Lots of crosses, more crosses than normal, I think. And that was obviously beneficial for Erling Haaland, but for some reason, Dan, they've stopped doing that.
What impressed you from United today, Stevie?
The organisation. You can't beat a team like City unless you're organised, particularly when you only have 30% of the ball. So, absolutely, the organisation. You look at that back four on paper, and I did this yesterday. I looked at the back four on paper, and I look at what City have going forward, and I'm thinking, this looks not quite a mismatch, but I tell you what, I fancy City big time.
Right.
But they gave them nothing. Defensively, the midfield, the back four. I don't remember De Gea making a save.
He didn't.
So the organisation and the defensive unit is fantastic, and that's why they are. That's why they're where they are.
The execution of a game plan as well, in that they're absorbing pressure, but when there is a recognition to go forward, then let's find the hot hand. Who is the hot hand? Is Marcus Rashford, who looked dangerous every time he touched the ball in transition. He looked more dangerous than everybody from Manchester City combined, because he looked like here's a player who's going to test that space in behind. He's going to test defender. He's going to go in 1v1 situation, and he's got that speed, drop of the shoulder, see you later. Had it not been for Ederson, maybe it's a different score in the first half. So Marcus Rashford himself allows Ten Hag and allows this team to absorb that pressure, recognize the execution of the game plan, and say, we have an opportunity to catch this team on the counter. And how vulnerable did Manchester City look on the counter? Very vulnerable.
Here's a conversation that we didn't think we'd be having with regards to Manchester United, but are they now title challengers? As it stands, Arsenal 5 points clear ahead of City. They win tomorrow, obviously. That goes to 8. But United currently sitting just 1 point behind Manchester City, who, according to the bookies, are still favourites to retain the title. Craig, United title contenders, are we there?
Well, I think they're in the race. I wouldn't say they're the finished article, far from it, but they're in the hunt. I mean, City, we've talked about them, they haven't been at the best. And Arsenal, this is new territory for them. So, I mean, they haven't looked Arsenal that they're going to blow up, but obviously North London derby tomorrow, big games coming up. So, yeah, Rashford on great form. Stevie mentioned the defending, so they're in the hunt for me.
Yeah.
Give me an old Don percentage.
Oof. 20% maybe.
Wow, that's quite high.
Well, why not? They don't look as though anybody's going to beat them. Now, as Craig said, they're far from the finished article. You know, they're not the United that's going to turn up anywhere and get after the opposition, as we saw in this game at home, 30%. But you know the magic thing about football is, all you got to do is win the game. It doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you do it. And right now, they're winning the games.
Who are your favourites now?
Arsenal.
Uh-oh. Turnaround. A turnaround. A turnaround.
Oh, no.
Full-on turnaround.
Arsenal, I'm afraid.
Oh, wow.
You want to put a bet on it?
Not bad for a team that hasn't improved.
Hey, his voice works for that.
I know, yeah. You get back to coffee, won't you?
Nathan, what was
He's
that?
only, by the way, he's only happy Lisandro Martinez is not playing.
Oh, yes,
That's
yeah,
only it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there's always a positive, isn't there?
Nathan, what did you make of Pep's comments afterwards saying we were not going to win the league?
Yeah, come on. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. I think for him to be saying after 18 games, he clearly doesn't mean that. I think he's just trying to wind people up, basically. Obviously, they're quite significantly far behind Arsenal now, especially if Arsenal win tomorrow. But he understands the way football works. The side could, in a few weeks' time, go on a good run and be right there in the mix again. And maybe he'll put his tongue in his cheek again and say, oh, you know, we're probably not going to win the league, but they might be, say, 2-3 points behind them. He says those things. Some people like him, some people don't. I don't think that's ever really going to change. And he says what he said was right about the Carabao Cup, obviously, because they're out. But for the Premier League, to say it's done now, he's just playing mind games with whoever wants to take offence to it, I think.
So, man. Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.